Introducing the Dark Girl Boss Podcast for the melanated woman and girl across the globe. Unlock your genes of greatness. Feel powerful within the skin you are in. Love your unique DNA through our stories, facts, original narratives, quotes and poems. Join me, your host, Khadijah Ward, on all major podcast platforms. Feel great and do great with the Dark Girl Boss Podcast, not to be missed. Well, my beauties, I've been off the grid for a bit, but I'm back now. I must tell you, last week I had a fantastic week. Last Wednesday, I went to Ascot, something that I don't normally do, but I went to Ascot with Agator's African Ladies' Day. It was absolutely fantastic, off the chain, so much fun, just bonding with family, with community. It was wonderful. And I had a little flutter. I didn't win anything, but I had a little flutter watching the races. It was all fun. Absolutely fantastic. Agator's, and that's Agator's is run by Warrior Queen Sister Angie Rose and her other half, Yui Rose. Check out Agator's. Agatours.co.uk. That's AGAtours.co.uk. Check it out, my people.
London is the place for me. London, this lovely city.
Windrush, 75 years. I'd like to start by saying, give thanks for life. Give thanks to our ancient ancestors and our ancestors of the Windrush generation that transitioned here in Britain, but probably never dreamed they wouldn't make it back to their homeland. I know my father had a 10-year plan for us all to be here and go back to Barbados, but alas, he and my mother are among the group of ancestors that transitioned here. I also give thanks to those of our Windrush elders that are still with us, to you all, those alive and those transitioned. You came with your culture, tenacity, intelligence, talents, integrity, style, smiles, unity, positive vibrations, and authenticity. And with that, you transformed Britain in every way possible. We salute you. Give thanks for paving the way for us here today, for without you, we wouldn't be who we are, where we are, or have what we have. Give thanks and praise.
London is the place for me. London, this lovely city.
When they contrasted the standard of living, even in wartime Britain, with what they'd known previously, many decided to return after the war and make their permanent homes here. As citizens of the Commonwealth, they were fully entitled to do this. But many found there were quite a lot of things that would take some getting used to.
The climate is something you can't really sneeze off. That's terrific. You can't begin to imagine what England is like.
Buildings were so dismal and so old. Yes, brother, England was cold.
Food, that makes an awful lot of difference too, because in the West Indies, things are highly seasoned and all that, whereas the English food is very, very plain, very, very mild.
All too often, the jobs they were offered were those that white workers weren't too keen on taking. Lowly paid positions, or jobs where the work was hard or heavy, or both. In some situations, they've made themselves quite indispensable. It's difficult, for instance, to see how the transport systems of London and Birmingham could now function without them.
I expected it to be much more advanced. The buildings to be higher and everything to be much quicker, faster, you know.
I found the place very disappointing, Lord. Yes, the sight was frightening.
I'm back. Wow. The Windrush generation began 22nd of June 1948. The ship SS Windrush docked in the Tilbury docks of Essex in Britain, and on it were our parents looking fly, young and beautiful descendants of Africans that had been born and raised in various parts of the colonized Caribbean, Barbados, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Jamaica, Trinidad, all over the Caribbean. On their trip, our parents must have had mixed feelings of excitement, anxiety, fear, joy, hope, big dreams, riches, optimism, and more as they traveled for a month by sea and entered into this cold, strange land called Great Britain, and incidentally, which they saw as the motherland, would you believe? In the recording I just played, where the commentator was talking as our parents stepped off the ship, he states, our parents came because they couldn't find work. Now, that is not entirely true. They came because they were invited by Britain after the government asked them to come to help rebuild it after World War II. There was a negative impact on Britain, well, on the economy. So let's not forget also, thousands of Caribbean men and women had been recruited to serve in the armed forces. Our parents fought for Britain during the so-called World War II. There's a sister called Selena Carty. She's based in Britain, who started an organisation called Black Poppy Rose in remembrance of our people that sacrificed their lives fighting in European wars. Also on her website, there's info on Windrush and an article and photo of her with an elder called Alfred Gardner, who is one of the 2 surviving passengers in the UK whom travelled aboard the SS Windrush in 1948. Yeah, so that's really nice to see. You can go on there and read that article. You can also order a Black Poppy Rose remembrance pin on her website for only £5. So check out the sister's website to learn more. It's blackpoppyrose.org. Some nice steel pan there. Compliments of DJ Steel Pan. Check him out on YouTube. Anyway, back to Britain's economy and why we were here. Britain was in dire straits. Aerial bombardment had destroyed cities. It was exhausted and devastated. There were major shortages of goods and labour for the rebuilding of this country. It needed all the help it could get. And it turned to our people in the Caribbean. We were required in every sector, from manufacturing, public transport, the NHS, and public services generally. Some of our parents were qualified lawyers, but were not allowed to practice in Britain due to racism, as law was seen as far too prestigious for the likes of us. Remember at the beginning I said our parents transformed Britain, and they actually did. And I don't just mean just doing through the hard work and doing their jobs. I mean, they thrived in a hostile and racist environment. They brought with them their authenticity, as I said, and their culture, arts, food, music, soca, calypso, reggae, all of it. Yeah. Notting Hill Carnival, founded by Trinidadian activist Claudia Jones in 1966, I believe. In Barbados, we call it crop over. Yeah, same celebration, but we call it crop over. But Claudia Jones brought the Caribbean here, a celebration in Britain, so we could enjoy something of home. We brought the cricket, not just the cricket, sports in general. We revolutionized British sports, period. We had our own systems as well for the partner. I mean, the carnival has become like an international celebration. People come from, all over the world to join in the carnival, yeah? That was started by our people, yeah? Our elders started that. Yeah, I always remember like house parties, with my parents. I remember my parents taking us to house parties, we just sit there. I used to get up and dance actually. I was only probably about 9. But I remember like we'd go to, house parties and, you take your kids. Um, I remember my dad and my uncle Alfonso and their friends, smashing down the dominoes and having a drink of rum. They were good times. I absolutely loved my childhood. And then we took over the raving, with the sound systems, just Shaka and Fat Man and then people there. And that was an entire movement. And it was a sense of belonging to us. Music, it was in our blood, it was cultural, But we have actually taken over. We've got the dance hall, the UK garage now, the jungle, the hip hop and the soul. We created the music industry. We are the music industry, and it would not exist without us. Rhythm and blues, all of it, all of it, all of it. It belongs to us. We created it. Even if people may be trying to, take it over, but we know where it comes from. We know who created it, and we know without us, it just would not exist.
London is the place for me. London, this lovely city.
Many decided to return after the war and make their permanent homes here. As citizens of the Commonwealth, they were fully entitled to do this. But many found there were quite a lot of things that would take some getting used to.
The climate is something you can't really sneeze off. That's terrific. You can't begin to imagine what England is like.
Buildings were so dismal and so old. Yes, brother, England was cold.
Food, that makes an awful lot of difference too, because in the West Indies, things are highly seasoned and all that, whereas the English food is very, very plain, very, very mild.
My father came here in 1958. I still have his original passport. He joined his elder brother, who was already here, and they shared some small digs. Back home, my dad was a carpenter. He used to make beautiful furniture from mahogany trees. And when he came to Britain, he couldn't do carpentry. He worked here for 2 years doing various jobs, including long-distance lorry driving. Then when he had saved enough money, he sent for my mother and my sister, who was 2 at the time. And after the arrival of my mother, I was born a year later. My elder brother and sister, Anita and Keith Ward, were left behind and were supposed to come to Britain at a later date. They were being raised by my aunt Enid, my dad's sister. My parents would write, send money and send barrels. My sister and brother ended up staying and growing up in Barbados because my dad could only afford to send for them one at a time. And my sister, only 10, I think, at the time, wouldn't leave my brother because they was really close. There was only like 18 months between them. And by the time my dad had enough money to send for them both, they wasn't allowed as the laws in Britain had changed. So they grew up in Barbados, and we missed out on growing up with the entire part of our family. And so I feel the Windrush era, it caused a lot of broken families, I believe. I mean, I didn't grow up with my brother and sister. I first met my brother and sister in 1978, I believe it was, when my mother took me back. I went to Barbados for the first time, and it was, I fell in love with my brother and sister immediately. But I just absolutely loved it in Barbados. It just like to see like everyone that looked like me. It was just absolutely wonderful. And also everyone used to talk, like they'd say good morning and good night when they saw you in the evening, because that's what we Bajans say when we see you in the evening. We say good night. And I'd be like to my mum, "Mum, do you know him? Mum, do you know her?" And my mum would be like, "No, that's how we do it here." And I was surprised because obviously brought up in England, I think I was only about 14 or 15. Nobody speaks to you if they don't know you. They don't even speak to you hardly if they do know you. But to everybody acknowledging you, even if they didn't know you, that's culturally, that's what we do. because we just have the love. We have so much love for each other. I'm not being idealistic. We do. We just naturally have a love for each other and other people. So that's why we acknowledge. It's just manners. It's just good manners. And so that was kind of a bit of a shock to me, having been brought up in England. But it was nice to see, and also, how they acted on buses. I saw, my mum would make us get up if there was an elder there to sit down. But here in England, it's like the little child sitting on the seat, and then there's, and someone standing up, and they won't give it to the elder. It's very, very different. It's different culture. We just gave up to make seats, or also you'd help people out. If you're sitting down, you'd take someone's shopping and put it on your lap so that if there wasn't enough room on the bus, it's very much community living and assisting each other and helping each other and working together. And a lot of that has been lost growing up within this society, living in this society. And it's just very, very unfortunate, but it's something that we should, try to regain. We must always remember the lives that our parents led and the values that they gave us, and we have to try to maintain those values. Very, very important. After they stepped off the Windrush, 22nd of June 1948, I believe reality set in rather quickly for our parents. I mean, when my mother arrived, she couldn't believe how cold it was. My dad had a coat for her, and she was like, I think she was kind of wondering why she had a coat, and then, realized that she needed a coat because it's really cold. But even so, she was happy and would say hello to everyone she saw, and that was the Caribbean way. She was shocked when people just ignored her. So Dad had to put her straight. He'd been here for a while, so he understood, what the British people were like, and he said, they don't do that here. By nature, we are sunny and delightful people, but that hostility by the British people was just the beginning of a ride to hell. I mean, a hell to racism. I mean, my parents with my uncle lived in Mail Road, Herne Hill, and then we moved to Shakespeare Road, Brixton, thereafter my aunt's house in Kelvin Road, Highbury in the early 60s. And when they arrived, many of our Windrush family had nowhere to live, so a vast number of our parents were transported by bus to Clapham, to a shelter underneath Clapham South Tube Station, and they received food and a bed for 6 shillings and sixpence per week. They were placed in civilian shelters that were used during the war. No windows, shortage of space, basically cramped and noisy due to where they were situated, the underground. One of our parents is reported as saying that the accommodation is primitive and unwelcoming, like a sparsely furnished rabbit's warren. Yeah? Can you imagine? They just left sunny Jamaica, beautiful scenery, when they look out of their window, cool breeze, tasty food, and you end up in a cold, windless, cramped underground shelter, unbearable noise of passing trains, and inferior tasting food. And today, the London Transport Museum has opened up the deep level site for tourists to explore on guided tours. Not a good memory for our elders, I'm sure. I'm back, people, and going to hear from a beautiful warrior queen, Sister Angela Rose, who is the co-founder of Agators and the charity All Together Giving Africa with her husband, Yui Rose. So, Sister Angie, welcome, welcome, welcome. Let us hear from you about your beautiful family. Please take it away.
Greetings, Sister Khadijah. How are you? Thank you for inviting me to be part of your podcast. I'm very grateful. When you asked me about the Windrush and to say a few words about my mother, I have to be honest, the first thought that came to my mind, or I should say the first word that came to my mind, was sacrifice. Why? And I thought about when we were growing up, and I'm going to go back to a memory that was quite challenging for me in 1971, when I actually thought about this, and I was very young. Our parents came over. In fact, my dad came over on the Windrush, and my mother came on another ship. And Dad came first and did what he had to do, and then Mum followed. But as we were growing up and they were settling here, you know, they worked very hard. And I remember Mum saying that Dad, you know, when Dad came, she was left in Jamaica. And I remember I used to ask her questions, and I remember I said to her, when you were coming to join him, did he meet you at the port? And she said, no, never had to do that. Okay. But the sacrifices they made in order for us to be here, now that I've grown and I'm at a mature age and I've lived the journey. For example, they used to have to leave us at home on our own. So there were three of us, three siblings, myself, my sister, and my brother. And what I'm going to actually share is quite emotional, but I've worked through it. So my sister died at the age of 8. And we were at home on our own that day, because during those days, you never got carers leave. You couldn't just take annual leave. For the most part, if we were off from school, we had to stay at home on our own and fend for ourselves. And as an older child, by default, I had a responsibility to take care of my younger siblings. But my parents never complained. Their main purpose was to provide the basic needs that we needed: food, water, and shelter. And I know my mom struggled sometimes, but she never showed me. I mean, as children, we're inquisitive. Excuse me. So I noticed little things, sometimes she'd cry, silently in the room. My dad, he just got on with it. He was the provider, the protector of his family, but they worked hard. They never shared most things that they experienced. Little snippets they would make comments about, when we come to this country, the way we was treated, or, she would say, oh, we never had a fridge, we never had these little things. I used to make the jelly on the windowsill. The fridge was the windowsill, outside of the accommodation. And I remembered vaguely some of those things that she'd speak about. But they were treated quite badly, And, other things she used to say to me, other little comments when we grew up, she'd say, don't trust them. But she never expanded about what she meant about not trusting them. Always have manners, Don't make them upset you. Those kind of little comments. But we had to figure it out for ourselves. But I guess now what I've realized is that she used to say those things because she didn't want us to be angry and bitter because they experienced racism. They experienced a hostile, oppressive environment, even though they were working hard, and they weren't being disrespectful in any way, but just because of who they are, and where they came from. And I always say that they were invited here. They didn't just come here. Their long-term plans was not to stay here. My dad was always saying, "Yeah, go back where I come from." But as time passed, the time passed, the 5 years, and, we were growing up. And I guess at that time, for them, it was about providing a better life for their children. So yes, where we are now, and I hear, 75 years of Windrush, and I must say, I don't actually like to refer to them as the Windrush generation. I refer to them as the pioneer generation, because that's who they were, pioneers, and what they achieved, how they lived, in those days was absolutely amazing. If we could have a little bit of those values and principles and, the unity, that they demonstrated in those hard times, where would we be now? So I remember that generation of strength, motivation, empowerment. These are the words, these are the values that come to my mind when I think about them. And I personally, where I am now, I never forget them. And I will never forget them. And everything that I do, every single day, I try to represent the pioneer generation at the highest level. Because without them, without my parents, without their friends, without those unknown pioneers, I could not be the person that I am today. My children would not be the people they are today. My grandson would not be who he is today. So I do not take what they endured, what they suffered, the blood, the sweat, the tears, lightly. And I will never. So I am very grateful for this opportunity, my dear sister Khadijah Ward, to just remember and to share some of those nuggets and memories.
Wow. I love it. Warrior Queen, Sister Angie, thank you so much. Give thanks. The pioneer generation. I love it. I absolutely love it. From now on, that's what we're going to refer our parents to as the pioneer generation. Love all the values, the words, empowerment, unity, values. I absolutely love it. And indeed, as I said, where would we be now without our pioneer generation? So give thanks once again, Sister Angie, for coming and joining the Dark Girl Boss podcast and giving us a little bit of insight into your beautiful family. Give thanks. Windrush and race relations. So the Racial Relations Act 1965 was the first piece of legislation in the UK to address the prohibition of racial discrimination. The Act banned racial discrimination in public places and made the promotion of hatred on the grounds of race, colour, or ethnic or national origins an offence. Okay, fair enough, but bear in mind, our parents probably didn't even understand, the legislation. May not even been aware of it. Probably didn't have enough money to take people to court, to get justice. So, as far as I'm concerned, it was just, a piece of legislation. But anyway, the bill received royal assent on the 8th of November 1965 and came into force a month later. It was introduced by the government in response to the increasing number of people, our people, who had moved to the UK from other Commonwealth countries at the time of the Act being passed. There were nearly 1 million so-called immigrants living in the UK. It was criticised for failing to address vital areas where discrimination was most prevalent, namely employment and wider aspects of acquiring accommodation, because we all know about, no blacks, no dogs and all that business. This led to the passing of the 1968 Race Relations Act, which made unlawful acts of discrimination within employment, housing and advertising. Since then, we've had the Race Relations Act 1976 and the Race Relations Act 1976 as amended. Yeah, I actually worked for the Commission for Racial Equality when that came into force, and that was in 2000. So that brought into force the race equality duty, and that was due to the murder of, our young brother Stephen Lawrence. So these acts of legislation, they haven't really prevented racism. I mean, racism just become more covert, really, and the government itself exercises racism. So it's quite a joke, really. Via its own laws, it's racist. It creates laws to exercise its own racism. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I mean, the immigration laws that prevented us bringing any more of our family over and becoming British citizens, and the law that enabled the government to deport millions of our people that came here as a result of Windrush. Absolutely unbelievable. We come here, build up your country from the wreck of ruin, and you have the audacity to tell us you do not have papers to prove you are legitimately here, and you are therefore no longer welcome here after 70 odd years of, cleaning up your shit. Get the fuck out of here. You people are scandalous, to say the least. Let's listen to some of our people talking about the Windrush scandal.
Should have been done years ago. Because it should have been done years ago. Because people came over here from the Caribbean, young, and work all their life, and then they tell them they don't have any status in this country. So that is wrong. And to be quite honest with you, it's what they're doing now is a little bit far too late.
What's your own experience? When did you come here?
I compare 1960. I came over here, and after a while, I did work at other jobs, and I joined the army, and I was in the army for 13 and a half years. And that's it.
So if somebody had come to you, I mean, you got your papers, didn't you?
Yes, I have all my documents.
If somebody came to you now and said, prove to me you're British, how does that make you feel?
Well, I have my papers. I can show anybody my papers and say, there you are. I have my passport. I have all my documents, my documents for proof that I'm British, and I have them. So it don't bother me. But other people that came over here and lost the papers, that don't have the savvy to get the documents in order, they're the people that you're going to bother.
It's an insult, isn't it?
It's more than an insult. It's degrading, actually, to someone. I mean, to be quite honest, people came over here and worked in the railways, the nurses' home, and the buses, and all such like jobs that other people didn't want to do, the English people didn't want to do. And now they tell them that they don't have any status. That's ridiculous.
I came over in 1963. Fortunately for me, my papers are in order. But I sympathize with the people that hasn't got their papers. I also sympathize with the people that cannot find the papers because of the government legislation. So, like he said, it's very unfair. You work here 30 years. Now, there's many people who lost their jobs, don't get no benefit. So I want to know how those people is going to be compensated for the 2 or 3 years that they lost. Somebody could call me on the street anytime and say, have you got your papers? Now, I know that my papers are in order. What I would say, you prove that I ain't right. You know, after being here 50 years, you prove that I'm not entitled to be here. I don't have to prove anything. I shouldn't have to prove anything.
Nothing has reported about it until lately. So how comes it took so long it to be recognized? And I came in 65. I lived in London for about 9 months before I joined the army, right? And I can remember when I first traveled abroad, my sergeant said to me, Moore, do you want to have your passport changed? Because I came and the Jamaican passport. And I thought, well, it's not necessary. I'm in the army. So why should I need my passport changed? Anyway, it's afterward I realized why he was saying that to me. Because when I came back to this country, I have to join a different queue to come through. And my sense of belonging will never change. It will never change. I am that I am, who I am. And I'll continue to be that. You know what I mean? I know there's a lot of, you would have called it injustice, especially when you have dark skin. There's a lot of injustice there. We never seem to get the 100% are treated fairly. But, you know what I mean? I don't let that bother me. I just get on with it. I hope and trust that these people who have slaved all their life practically in this country will get a just reward at the end of the day.
Whether you have a Jamaica passport or a British passport, it shouldn't really make any difference because you were born British. You're part of the Commonwealth. So this hoo-ha about, I feel is an underhanded thing because I remember the statement that James Callahan made in 1964-65. I was at school then, I remembered it, and it is coming back today. Because one of his things is we and the Europeans have the same culture. So what they're telling us that although you've been British for 400 years, you haven't got the same culture as a British person, which is totally wrong. Man.
Yeah, well, one of the things that mystify me is that back in the day when we were required, they asked us to demonstrate our loyalty to the crown. They brought us over as British subject. Having done so, we did what we were supposed to do to assist, Britain in all its wants and needs. And all of a sudden, they sort of wanted, more or less to disqualify us from being British subjects. We demonstrate our loyalty to them. Why they want to, take that away from us at this stage? We all British subjects, right? We legally, accepted at that stage. All of a sudden, when it's convenient for them to think otherwise, we left in the lurch. It's not fair.
All of you, you've all got your paper. Can you explain why you feel that so personal?
Because we are all of one race. Of course it will affect us. Of course they're friends and distant relatives who may not have, seen in the same light as we are. their lives are destroyed. It's not right, and we will feel it. It's a brotherhood there, so to speak.
Some people assume, owing to the fact that they came here 8 years of age with their parents, go to school, all their lives, work. They believe, or some assume, that they automatically be British and never bother. So I think it's the assuming situation that caused them not to fill the papers out. I think that's where one of the problems is.
I would personally call it a Brexit syndrome, whereas lack of information, lack of proper information, or what you can do or what you can't do, or what you should do, and to achieve this, to get your papers in order.
A lot of people accept that they were British, and now they're more or less taking it away from us, saying, well, you have got to have papers, and the papers you have been destroyed, So what can you do? Can't do anything about it.
You asked the question why we all feel so strongly about it, considering that you might have, four different nationalities here, if you don't, Barbados, Trinidad, or wherever. Yeah, we do feel strongly about it. We're a collective, like in the United Nations. Touch one, you touch all. That's all it is. Touch one, you touch all, my friend. Mm-hmm. So we will feel strongly about it. And we're not going to jump on the road and protest and riots. We're too old for that now. We want a peaceful transition, and we can only trust that the government today stick to the promises that they've been making for the last couple of days or so.
I'm surprised at this stage is to seem to have a difficulty, the distinction between legal and illegal. They're trying to say to us it's illegal that they're putting the emphasis on, and yet they're unable to explain as to how they become illegal. We can only make this because they haven't fulfilled the right documentation. That may be the case, but that's not a difficult thing to get to the bottom of, is it? And it's not. It really is sad. Well, I think most of us will say, who's been through the right sort of lines, most of us will say that we are British. Our responsibility first and foremost would be to the British.
Yeah, but how do you feel about Britain, the British government, and this country?
We're in a minority. We're in a minority, and if we do, most of us do feel accepted here. Let's face it, 3 million of us and 85 million of the other people. If they were all bad, we wouldn't be here, would we? It's just a matter of legislation and government mishandling, and not giving the right people, the right officers, the right information to deal with these problems. That's it.
But has the scandal made you feel any differently about the country?
No, I would be ashamed of it. Couldn't be. For this to happen, I said the only thing we can do is say a shame of the country to let this happen. You know what I mean? But as far as I'm concerned, I'm here over X amount of years, so I got to be accepted to this country and roots.
I think first and foremost, our allegiance, will be to British, because we develop a culture which is pleasant in our eyes. We got nothing against the British as such, but we treat it correctly. And even so, whatever they say, it's not going to be. It's not going to be just handed in just like that. We really would have to,
The allegiance to the Britain and the Commonwealth and the royal family. I think most people in England will stick to the same thing. We've had problems before. We've had problems worse than this, and we have overcome that. And one of the things that a lot of people here, well, they happen to know that now of a government who said, look, we will do this and we will do that. We wait with bated breath to see whether they come up with it. But most of us believe that they will. To me, there's an undercurrent going on. There's an undercurrent going on. The European Union, the influx from from the Eastern Bloc and stuff like that. There's an undercurrent going. Like I said, I remember James Callahan talking about cultures. Remember that, distinctly. So there could be that, apart from the countries getting bankrupt.
But you've got to follow that through, haven't you? I mean, if the worry is about Eastern European migrants coming here and swamping British culture, why are they taking it out on this generation?
Because we're a scapegoat.
We got the same culture.
We made a scapegoat. When the war finished, the British government asked the Caribbean island, come over, help us build England. I came in 1960, do every job under the sun, and they reached the stage now they want the European to come in. So what they try to do is kick out the blacks and bring in the European because they haven't got nowhere to come and live. And that's the only thing I think behind it all.
So what do you think is...
Yeah, that's what I think. I think they was trying, probably it backfired, but they was trying to get rid of us and bring the European in so it will be all white. And that's it. And that's the way I see it.
Does it surprise you?
Very, very much after coming here and work my butts off, it couldn't. Not right.
So it does change the way you feel about Britain.
It changed the way I feel, but not Britain and its whole, because I lived here for 56 years. And I
don't know if it changed your allegiance to Britain. It changed the way you think Britain feels about you.
Well, it's not Britain. It's certain people. The government. It's the government what run the country. That's what do it.
The British people on a whole is decent people.
Of course.
It's just legislation that the government is trying to appease another minority group that think off the grid, really. And it's sad, but we will overcome that. Been through worse.
The political side of things, we can't deal with here, and we can't handle it here. I came to Britain from tiny little island in St. Vincent. I knew no prejudice of any kind when I left my homeland. The colonial masters were there. They had their children there. We all went to school together. We played together. We did everything together. Until I came to England in 1961 as a young man, 19 years of age, thinking, of course, that I'm going to the motherland and all the help I need is there. I met and put up with some racism, well, a lot of racism, really, and we overcame those. In 1963, I decided, well, you know something? Probably there's a better life for me if I change the way things are at the moment. So I joined the army, where I've served for 22 years, leaving in the rank of warrant officer. And even then in the army, we had this problem of racism, and not on a large scale, but it was there. I think most of it was jealousy to an extent, because 3 or 4 of us black guys, among 40, 50 English or Irish or whatever guys, you had to compete. And I always compete to win. And I think most of that time, whatever racism or whatever prejudice there was down to some form of jealousy. If I can't get you one way, I'll get you the other, so to speak. What is happening today? I don't really understand it, and I don't really understand the reason why. When I left my island, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we were British. I came here as a British subject. I eventually got rid of my old passport and received a British passport, but not until I was told that I had to pay, right, to receive a bit of paper, some form of certificate that says I am a British citizen. Why? That was the question I asked. After 18 years of serving this country around the world, I was suddenly faced with the fact that I don't belong here. It didn't make sense. I had to pay. I absolutely refused. Absolutely refused. I'm traveling around on an ID card or a passport to various parts, well, not so many parts of the world, like Cyprus, Eden, Germany, even Northern Ireland, where I narrowly escaped death a couple of times, serving this country. And then suddenly someone saying to me, I have to pay for that privilege. Well, that wasn't a privilege. I was serving a cause. I had an allegiance. Why suddenly take it away from me or thinking that, now you don't belong anymore? Yeah? So I absolutely refused. I went and had interviews with my commanding officer and such people and explained my situation to them. And I said, I'm not doing this. I was entitled to read Queen's regulations like every other officer in the Army or Navy or Air Force. And in those days, I noticed, and I knew for a fact, there were guys joining the forces from the Republic of Ireland. They're a different story to someone who came here as a British person. And they had passports. Given. They weren't buying it.
So what happened to you? Did you get it?
Of course, well, I didn't get a passport. I got a bit of paper, right? I made the army pay for it. But the deal was, I will pay and they will refund the money. So I made absolutely sure that I got my money. Because I saw no sense at all whatsoever that after 18 years of serving this country, I'm suddenly told, what happens then if I'd finished? Was I too going to be deported?
Yes.
Yeah, it didn't make sense.
Well, there it is. You heard from some of our veteran elders there about what they thought about the treatment of us, the racist treatment really towards us. And one of the elders actually talked about Britain trying to remove us to make way for particular white ethnic groups. And I'm actually inclined to believe that. It makes complete sense. And I actually thought that before anyway. But I mean, there you have it. You know, that's how it goes. Yeah, we're always treated at the bottom of we're always put at the bottom of the pile by Europeans. We're treated like rubbish, regardless of what we do, how much we do to help, how friendly we are. We're always treated like trash in the end. Anyway, the government, I believe reluctantly, came up with a scheme. It's called the Windrush compensation scheme. And it's for people that, you know, where there was a negative impact for them due to this Windrush scandal. Now, this scheme itself is a minefield, and I think that it's been deliberately created in that way, so it's hard to navigate. So people will find it very difficult to get to complete the forms and do what have you. And it's designed in that way. You know, that's what they do. They design systems that way to make things difficult. We know that. But it's this the compensation. You can get compensation. It's meager. It's very meager compensation for the way they treated us. I think it's an absolute insult. But there you have it. Just, you know, why not just try to get as much as you possibly can? And there's people, some of our people that help you with this. So there's a brother called Ronald Houslin or Houslin. I do apologize, my brother, if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. But he helps. I'm just trying to find it, actually, his details now. So there's a website called Justice for Windrush Generations.co.uk. And let me say that again. Justice for Windrush Generations, that's with an S at the end, .co.uk. And you go there and you can find all relevant information and contact details about how you can get help to navigate this compensation scheme. And actually, the brother has kindly given me his contact details. So it's Ronald Housling, and his email. So I'll give you his email and his number. His email is RHOUSLIN1 @gmail.com. I'll say that again. That's RHOUSLIN1 @gmail.com. So that's Romeo Hotel Oscar. What's that? Sierra Lima India November 1 @gmail.com. And the brother's telephone number is 0799917811. So that's 0799917811. Yeah. But I mean, you can contact me if you have any problems. I think you have my number. You can find me anywhere on the internet. Contact me if you have any problems. But yeah, it's justice4windrushgeneration.co.uk. Go on there. You can get some help to try to get some payment for this scheme. As I said, it's really, really difficult to navigate. So we need to help. We need to help each other with this. But I say claim as much as you possibly can. I just used to remember, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you can resonate with this, all the stories that our parents used to tell us, about the Caribbean, and you actually felt that you were there with all these stories. I just loved it. I just loved to hear all the stories. Very exciting. I know that my mother, one of her jobs, she used to pick cotton, one of her jobs. Then she was a seamstress, a machinist, I think she was doing, so she'd tell me about all these jobs she had, tell me about how she had to cook when she was, she was only about 12 years old and she had to cook for her father. Her mother wasn't there. My mother's mother, my grandmother, she'd gone on to St. Lucia actually to seek her fortune, and she ended up having two of my uncles there. So they were raised in St. Lucia, and she continued to live there until she died. She was 110. I met my grandmother. I saw her first went in Barbados when I first went in 78. Then I saw her again, went to her 100th birthday, and I saw her a couple of times after that. But my mother, she was there. She was left with her two younger brothers. One of them who's now passed. One of them's still alive, the very youngest one, my Uncle Neville Ward. I really love him. But so she was there. She was left behind. So she had to kind of grow up very, very quickly. One of the stories that I love is the story she told me about my father when she said he rescued this little monkey, a baby monkey, from somewhere or the other. It was in pain or something that happened, so he rescued it. And then he used to walk around with that little monkey on his shoulder, and that monkey follows him everywhere. I thought that so beautiful story. Can you imagine? Just walking around with this little monkey on your shoulder everywhere you went, the monkey went. Absolutely wonderful. Love the stories. Love all the stories. You know what? I think I want to do a podcast on that. Hear all the stories from people. I want to collect the stories from you all. I want to collect stories and hear all the good stories from when our parents were back home. That's going to be my next one. All the stories. I just want to hear all these stories. So that will be the next one. This is a story about racism. This one, obviously, here, not in the Caribbean. My mother told me that my dad nearly killed a man because the man spat in his face. Yeah, racism, spat in his face. And my dad just saw red. And he just nearly killed him. My uncle, fortunately, who was with my dad at the time, had to drag my dad off this man because my dad would have killed him. And can you imagine if they would have got caught by the police, what would have happened? I don't even like to imagine. But at the end of the day, all of that racism, that's just that kind of hate. I just don't understand it. I just really, really, I just don't get it. I just don't understand that kind of hatred that you would feel towards someone that you would feel that because of your colour of your skin, I think that I can spit in your face. Well, no one's going to stand there and allow you to do that. Thank you very much. So there you have it. Take your beating. You know, the racism was such that, you know, they wouldn't even allow us to open bank accounts. Can you imagine? You ask a people to come over here and clean up your country and do the jobs that you don't want to do. And you don't even want them to bank in your banks. Yeah? Your banks, which were created as a result of slavery anyway. You don't want us to bank in them. But to be honest, I think that works out for the best because our parents started using the partner, which they used to use when they was, you know, back home anyway. You know, so it's our own banking system that we use. And I think that we as a people today here in Britain need to turn to the trust our parents had between them when they first arrived here. The partner banking system was ours. We controlled it and we used it for the benefit of our people. I remember being in a partner when I was about 17, and some girls that I used to work with, they was from Jamaica actually, and they did the partner, and you know, I was in it. I loved it, and I loved it when it was my turn to get the money, and you know, it helped me save for wherever I wanted. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. We need that self-governance again. Banks are not institutions of trust, yet we trust our livelihood with them. In fact, as I said, banks were created on the back of the enslavement of our ancestors. Therefore, on the basis of principle and integrity, we should not support them. We shouldn't even really be putting our money in there. We must rebuild the trust we once had and rely upon ourselves. Self-reliance, I'm always promoting that. To govern ourselves, to build and grow together. That's what we need to be doing. We need to take some lessons from our elders, our ancestors that came here, yeah, from the Windrush. We need to take some lessons from them in terms of how to conduct ourselves as a community, as a unit, and working together. The principles they brought from the Caribbean, we need to maintain those principles. And I think that we'll do a lot better once we start taking on board those principles and remembering, you know, where we actually came from and the lessons that we were taught when we were growing up. Yes, we were raised in Britain, but within our household, we were brought up within Caribbean households. So we had the same values, we had all the same integrity, the same community, the same working together, the same unit, the same love for one another, which one of the elders was talking about when he was talking about the scandal. He was saying, touch one, touch all. That's why we feel it. He was asked by the commentator, why do you feel it? You have your papers. But he said he felt it because it's one of his own. Yeah? That's how we have to build that community again. So we need to learn from it. We cannot just allow our parents to come here, be treated the way they were treated, and then we just, you know, get on and just carry on as though nothing's happened. We need to take those principles forward and make it count. Make the life that they came here, the sacrifices they made, count. We need to make it count. Sister Angie, I'd just like to say, yeah, give thanks for opening up your heart to us. Just really being honest and showing your emotions about the tragic loss of your younger sibling. I can't even imagine what that must be like, losing a sibling and as one so young as well. So, Sister Angie, thank you so very much. And I speak on behalf of all of our brothers and sisters. Our heart goes out to you and your family. Well, my beauties, my people, I hope you enjoyed the Windrush 75-year generation special, or as our warrior queen, Sister Angie, would say, the pioneer generation. I hope you enjoyed this special. Please share the podcast with your family, with your friends. And always remember, feel great and do great. This is Khadijah Ward of the Dark Girl Boss Podcast. If you want to know more about me, just go to DarkGirlBoss.com. I'm out. Introducing the Dark Girl Boss Podcast for the melanated woman and girl across the globe. Unlock your genes of greatness. Feel powerful within the skin you are in. Love your unique DNA through our stories, facts, original narratives, quotes and poems. Join me, your host, Khadijah Ward, on all major podcast platforms. Feel great and do great with the Dark Girl Boss Podcast, not to be missed.